going to ask everybody to introduce themselves, and then we'll just get right started. Thanks so much. So please, Peter.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Peter Gore. I live in Palatine, Illinois, and I'm retired, but I'm an active member of the Illinois Solar Energy Association.
I'm Alex Pelicano. I'm the Building Division Manager for the Village of Downers Grove. So for permits and inspections, code enforcement, I'm supervisor over those activities for the village.
And I'm Brandon Thiel. I'm a resident who's recently installed solar.
I'm Laura Kamodolsky. I'm the former PTA president at El Sierra School in Downers Grove. We just put solar panels on El Sierra last year.
Hi, I'm Lucille Carney, and I'm the principal at El Sierra School and worked with Mrs. Kamodolsky on the solar panels.
Hi, my name is Ryder May. I'm from Robert Bear Services. We're a local plumbing, heating, air company. We also do geothermal and solar thermal, which we'll be talking about later.
Hi, I'm Mark Handy from Kenjiva Energy Systems. We're an energy management as a service provider, which means that we do energy audits, measurement and verification work, and solar projects, installation and commissioning for both photovoltaic and solar thermal. And we were the installation contractor for Mr. Thiel's installation.
Very good. Thank you very much. So we're going to start right off with Peter. So take it away, please.
Okay. Well, it's great to see so many people interested in clean, renewable energy. Can everyone hear me okay? If not, just, raise your hand. As I mentioned, I'm a member of the Illinois Solar Energy Association, and I joined the association because in 2011 I converted my home to solar. And it was such a positive experience for me that I now devote as much time as I can to education and advocating for solar energy. And that is the mission of the association, to, again, to educate and advocate, and a very good place to begin if you are interested in going down this road. And that's what I did. I took a class through ISEA, and from there, and we're going to talk through the process. ISEA is a member-based organization. We have some 400 individuals and about 100 businesses. And there's information on the back table. My card is there as well, and I welcome people contacting me as a user and as a representative of the association. I'm happy to offer assistance however I can. What I want to cover in the few minutes that I have is basically why is clean renewable energy important. Cover some of the misconceptions people may have about solar energy. Just give you a quick overview of the basic building blocks of a solar energy system, as well as cover the finances. Naturally, the finances are very site-specific, but there is a bit of a formula, and I can discuss some of the things that go into the finances of this kind of a system. And then, of course, I'm going to briefly go over the steps in the process, although we have people here who do install, and another homeowner here, and they'll also get into their experiences. Now, what motivates most people, I believe, to investigate solar, and it was in my case, is environmental concerns. And certainly we have with our current climate disruption. We're in crisis mode. Others may feel that it's a patriotic thing to do, that you hear a lot about energy independence, energy security, and certainly keeping our energy dollars in this country is a good thing to do. And of course, maybe you're just interested in saving money. The nice news tonight is that solar delivers very well on all three of these points. Now, when we talk about the environment and energy, I think we would admit that we've been somewhat lulled into accepting kind of a lot of negative baggage with the conventional energy sources that we probably have been using. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think you'll see that, you know, if we had an alternative that would eliminate some, hopefully all of these, that would be a very good thing. But there is a cost associated with these items. And there's an economic term for these. It's called a negative externality. This is a cost to society that is outside the cost you pay for the product. And I think you would agree that air pollution, water pollution, CO2 emissions, those are things that we are having to pay for in our tax bills, our doctor's bills, and our insurance premiums. So there is the cost that we pay, and then there is the added cost as a society that we have to pay for, again, some of these negative externalities that we have kind of grown to accept, because energy indeed is important. Now, when I was researching my system, I said, well, I didn't want to go from bad to worse. I mean, generating energy from any source has an impact on the environment. But when I looked at solar, I saw that all of these went away. Now, again, there is no perfect energy source out there. Certainly solar has a bit of an impact, but when I looked at the dozens, and literally there are dozens of choices when it comes to energy generation, roof-based solar panels were the least environmental impactful. So that was the place I wanted to be. I wanted to be better, and solar provided me that path. Now, on the patriotic side, there's good news here as well. You can direct all your energy dollars when you go solar to stay within this country. If you did, as I did, specify that your equipment be made in the US, then, and the fuel is free, no, you know, you're not buying your fuel from anybody, it is just the equipment that you purchase, then effectively 100% of your energy dollars stay in this country. Also, and this, you don't hear much about this, per unit of energy generated, renewables create more jobs than the conventional fossil fuel-based alternative. And then, of course, I think we'd agree that some of the people that we buy our energy from are not the most friendly individuals, and I think you'd be happy not to be having to send your hard-earned dollars to people that, quite honestly, want to kill us. You know. I next kind of want to talk about some of the misconceptions that we often hear about solar. You know, we're way up north, you know, it's too cold and too cloudy. It's too expensive. It's prohibitively expensive, and it's much too complicated. On the subject of expense, Chicago is about 90% as effective as the same system in Miami throughout the year, and in the summer, we actually would outperform that system if it's sitting in Miami. So the bottom line is Illinois is great for solar. We're going to talk, I'm sure, across several of the panel members here about cost, and I know that, again, it's the first question I always get, and I'll talk about it a little bit. But what I want to say is that with solar, as with any new product, because of where it is in its product life cycle, we can look forward to decreasing costs. And you may say, how much lower can it go? This looks very dramatic. Well, it can go very, very much further. Right now, I have panels that are like the size of this desk that generate 240 watts. Why couldn't that panel eventually evolve to generate 2,400 watts. Think about how computers have evolved. And wouldn't it be nice if instead of a panel this size, we had a panel this size generating the same amount of energy? I don't think that's beyond the realm of possibility here. So the future for solar and clean renewables is very bright, not only for the environmental benefits that they offer, but for the prosperity that it's going to offer in job creation, as well as how cheap it will become to generate your very own electricity. Couple that with the fact that right now there are very generous state and federal incentives. The state can offer up to 25% or capped out at $10,000 rebate. It's a first come, first serve. I got $14,000 rebate from the state on my system. Now, there's also a federal incentive, and that equates to a 30% tax credit. Not a deduction, an income deduction. This is a tax credit. Now, I got that as well. So with my incentives, I shaved 60% of the cost of the system off. Now, you can imagine these incentives from the government are not going to be around forever, and the state is becoming a little less and less generous. And as you know, the state is not in the best financial situation. So again, the situation is very good right now to take advantage of these incentives. Now, let me also cover some of the basic building blocks of a solar system. Now, there are basically two types of solar system. One is called solar thermal. It's for generating hot water. Another is for generating electricity. It's solar photovoltaics, solar PV. Here's a home with both, so you can see the difference. They both have solar collectors. The one that are more angled off the roof are the solar thermal, and then the ones that are laying flat against the roof are the solar PV, or solar electric. The solar thermal, again, not terribly complex. You're basically running water through solar panels that heats up, and through a heat transfer device, it preheats the water to your conventional system. Like if you're just heating water, maybe you're heating your home with hot water. This system will take a lot of the burden off, and your conventional equipment won't have to work so hard. So you're looking at panels, you're looking at piping, pumps and tanks, and then a heat exchange device. And there are people here that know a lot more about the technology and can answer questions and maybe talk a little more detail about that kind of a system. But it's not terribly complex. Solar PV, solar electric, very similar in that you have panels. Now, there's no liquid involved. These are panels that are solid state. There's silicone wafers or silicone crystals. And essentially, these panels take light. It doesn't, on a cloudy day, you can still generate electricity, but not quite as much. The more intense the light, the more electricity generation you will get from a panel. But the panel generates DC electricity. That electricity goes to an inverter, which converts it to AC electricity. That plugs into your service panel, your fuse box, and away you go. Now, if you want to be off the grid, then you would have to purchase storage device, batteries. But most people stay connected to the grid and they net meter. And what that means is, and I do that, and what that means is that during the day, generally I'm generating more electricity than my home is using, and I'm sending this down on the grid. And so my meter, you could say, goes backwards. Then in the evening, I need the energy back, and then my meter will go forward. So basically, I'm using ComEd as my battery. Now, I pay a charge, like we all do. about $20 a month to be tied to the grid. But if I generate more electricity in a month than I use, they just roll over those extra kilowatt hours to the next month. If I take more energy than I've delivered to them, I pay a monthly bill. My first year with the system, I averaged $5 a month in electricity supply cost. Not bad. But that's net metering, and it's a fairly simple concept, but a very important service to be available. And also the rates that are offered are actually dictated by legislation. So we have to keep an eye on the laws, because they can change and they can affect the rate that you will get as you net meter. But right now, as a homeowner, you get a 1-to-1 rate on the energy. So again, I just covered net metering. And one thing about net metering is that at the end, every 12 months, and it's calculated either in the spring or the fall, you select the time frame. What ComEd does is, if there's any energy in the bank with them, they zero it out. Now, if I owe them money, I still have to pay them money. It's funny how things kind of seems to always favor the utility. But again, that's legislative. So I guess one of the messages, whether you're going to be a solar user, you can be a solar advocate. And there's always pending legislation on renewables and solar, and I encourage you to keep up with that and make sure that people like me, little homeowners, are not taken advantage of, and that we're just given a fair shake when it comes to generating our own electricity. Now let's get into the sizing and pricing. Now again, sizing is going to be very site specific, and we have people here that will probably get into a little more detail. This is just to give you an example of maybe what the cost might be. Let's say it's a $30,000 system installed with the state and the federal rebate. You would end up paying $13,500, about 55% off of the list, so 45 cents on the dollar. Not bad for a home improvement. Now, what people often do is take that number and then divide it by their monthly savings. Let's say I'm saving $100 a month, in electricity, so it's going to take me, or $1,000 a year, it's going to take me 13 and a half years before I break even. Well, when people ask me what my payback was, I answer it this way. The day I flipped the switch on my system, it made me a wealthier person. And this is how I look at it. Now, up top is that calculation I just showed you, where, yeah, you're going to have an out-of-pocket expense. You're going to tie up some money. But you just added a home improvement that you paid 45 cents on the dollar. Now, if you turn around and sold your home the next year, in 5 years, you're not going to ask any premium for that system. You're not going to point to the potential buyer and say, oh, with this house, you have a $30,000 solar system. If you got half the value of that system when you sold your house, you've made money. Now, that's not taking into account the monthly dividend check you're getting from ComEd in the form of they're not charging you anything. And I'm not going to get into much detail, but I'm sure somebody here will, and if not, during the Q&A we can cover it. There's something else as a renewable energy producer. You generate a renewable energy credit for every megawatt hour of energy you produce, and you can sell those. In this state, we have a ways to go to build a better market, but I've averaged $75 a month in income just for having my system. So again, the finances are, I think, very attractive, and I wish I put even more panels on my roof. I'm going to kind of be wrapping up here in a couple minutes here. The process, there is some red tape involved with installing a solar system. Certainly, the sizing and design is very specific, and you want to hire a good contractor who will look and maximize the benefits to you for your home or your facility. There's permitting and inspections, which will be talked about. That's very municipal specific. Each town has different costs and policies. In Palatine, it was a standard building permit. There's connection to ComEd if you're going to net meter and stay on the grid. And if you do net meter, you'll sign a contract with ComEd, pay them $50. But in my case, they also came out and they gave me a new meter so that we could track the energy going back and forth. There was no charge for that. There's making sure that you are compliant with the rules of the state rebate, which change all the time. And then, of course, there's applying for your federal tax credit, which is there's a federal form, and you just work with your accountant or do it yourself. And then there's a potential to sell the renewable energy credits that you will earn as your system is up and running. Now, just to kind of wrap up, and I'm not going to go into great detail here because we do have people involved with the installation, but the steps are that you want to find, well, the first step is you want to educate yourself, attend meetings like this, attend classes, read up on the technology and some of the choices you have. Find a good contractor. They should provide you with a good design. We're going to talk in a minute about, you'll need to come up with some funding. You are going to tie up some cash. Then, of course, you'll apply for and get your permits. You'll install the system. My system took 2 days to install. So, when they arrive in a couple of days or less, you'll be off and producing clean energy. So in financing a system, it's like any home improvement. You have a lot of choices. I did the first thing. I had a good line of credit on my home and a very good rate, 2.5%, which is tax deductible. So I just took some equity out of my home and I invested it back in my home. You can, if you're refinancing your mortgage, take out a little extra money and spread the cost of the system across the term of your mortgage. There are companies out there that would lease you solar systems and you just pay them a monthly fee. So it's very similar to the way you pay for your energy today, but you're getting good, clean energy. Some dealers might finance the system for you. There's also something called community solar, where you partner with neighbors or within the community or within an organization, put up a larger system, you share the cost and you share the energy. And then, of course, last but not least, there's something called PACE, which currently is not available in Illinois, a little complicated, but it is something that could come about, it's where the town gives you money for your system and then you pay them back by paying them more come property tax time. They just up, what they ask on your property tax. So I think with that, you know what? I'm not gonna talk about I have one slide on SREX, but I'm gonna kind of skip over that. And I just kind of want to answer the question, or hopefully we've answered this question, does solar energy make sense? And on so many dimensions, the answer is yes. Now, I have information back there, my card, and there's a website from ISEA, and at that point, I'll pass the mic to next.
Thank you very much, Peter. We'll be going to Alex next. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alex Pellicano, the Building Division Manager for the Village of Downers Grove. The Community Development Department is the village department that you'd be dealing with for your permits and inspections with any solar installation you might do. The goal tonight for me is to explain our role in your solar panel project. So what do we do with the Community Development Department? Our primary function is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. So really it's all about safety, like any building code or enforcement activity. That's really what it boils down to, is making sure that whatever work is being done on your property is safe for you and your neighbors and the community at large. The way we do this is through reviewing permit submittals and by conducting inspections. The submittals that we would need for an installation like this would be the permit application itself, drawings and specifications, and any contractor's licenses that require state licenses, really, in order to perform the work. So let's look at those each. The permit application is pretty simple. It's available online, or come into Village Hall and get a copy of it. There's the web address for it directly online. On that application, really, there's not a whole lot there that you would need for this project, just your contact information, your contractor's contractor, and subcontractor's information as well, and an estimated value of construction. This process is going to sound more complicated than it is because I'm going to show you a little bit about what we do behind the scenes. But if you have any questions at any time, we really do encourage you to just pick up the phone, give us a call, stop into Village Hall. I've got a stack of business cards here, and we can walk you through the process. We do it every day. Drawings and specifications, that aspect of the submittal that you'd be giving to us would involve a marked up copy of an existing plat of survey. That would be an ideal way to communicate to us where the system is going to be installed, how big it's going to be. We'll look at some of the zoning regulations that would play into that. And the specifications would just be manufacturer's data sheets on the products that you're installing, giving us the characteristics so that we know what we need to know about the roof loading that might be in effect and some other things. This information is critical to ensure that you'll meet all the applicable zoning and building codes. If you don't know if you have a plat of survey or not, which is a typical submittal for just about any permit that you might get through the village, usually comes with your closing documents on your property. If you don't have one, don't call a surveyor right away and ask for one, because that's going to cost more than your whole permit's going to cost. So come into the village, tell us if you have one or not. If you don't, we may have one from a previous permit that was pulled on your property address. And even in that case, if you don't have that or we don't have it, we can work with you through satellite imagery that we have available to us, that we can then just mark up that and indicate distances to property lines and so on and so forth. As far as the contractor's licenses go, a valid electrician's license if it's an electrical system, and an Illinois plumber's license if it's a water system that you're using your solar panels for. This ensures that qualified personnel are taking responsibility for the work that's being done on the property. All right, so we have all these submittals that you've given to us now. What is our review process? So this is behind the scenes stuff. The nice thing about the way we do this, and quite frankly why I came to work for the village after dealing with municipalities for 20 years as an architect in private practice, is that there is a single source responsibility with the village for building permits. It's a project manager-based system. A project manager is assigned to your project based on your geographic location within the village, and they're your single source. They coordinate all the staff that's involved in your building code review, and your application is simultaneously reviewed by all the different departments. It doesn't go from A to B to C. We make multiple copies, and they all go to all of the different departments at the same time. And these are what we are reviewing for: the zoning ordinances, the building codes, and the electrical code. Now, I do have to say that currently we are under a new draft review of the zoning ordinance, so some of this information is subject to change. That's just a disclaimer. Quite frankly, this solar, the small portion of the zoning ordinance that's involved with solar really isn't going to change much, if at all. So let's talk about zoning. The way they classify in the zoning ordinance the different solar systems is how they're mounted on the structure itself, or if they're separate from the structure. So you have building integrated, which actually replaces a normal building component. Like instead of a roof finish, you would have solar panels instead of the roof finish. Then you have flush mounted, which is on top of your roof system, but no greater than 6 inches above the surface of your roof. And then there can be non-flush, which would project up off the roof. And lastly, ground-mounted systems that aren't connected to the structure at all. And here's some images of those. So building integrated, pretty radical, where the roof finish, the shingles themselves are replaced by solar panels. The flush-mounted, parallel to the roof, no greater than 6 inches. Non-flush mounted, angled up off the roof. And then ground-mounted, not attached to the structure at all. What we're looking for with the zoning ordinance review, all applicable setbacks and encroachment allowances come into play. So setbacks mean how far off of your property lines does anything that you're doing have to be. So if you're doing a ground-mounted system or even a roof-mounted system, if your building happens to be close to the property line, those regulations would come into play. How far is that distance? It depends on the zoning district that you live in and the size of the house in its current location. So there's too many variables to really say exactly what it would be at this point, but this is what we're reviewing for. Only flush-mounted systems, and I should add to that integrated systems, are allowed on the street-facing building elevation. So what you would see when you're driving down the street, we only allow them to be flush to the roof surface or integrated into the roof surface, not the projecting type. The height is limited for solar energy systems to not more than 3 feet above the maximum building height or more than 5 feet above the highest point of the roof line, whichever is less. All right, so your zoning district where you live dictates the maximum height of a building that is built in that zoning district. So if your maximum height is 35 feet allowed in that district, and your house, for example, is currently 33 feet high, then you're 3 feet away from your maximum that's allowed there. With the 3 feet above what is allowed, that would allow you to build up to 36 feet. If you went with the 5 feet above your actual highest point, that would be 38 feet. You get to go the least of those two numbers. So in that example, you'd be able to go up to 36 feet. The building codes that we're reviewing for. The 2006 International Code Council codes, as adopted by the Village of Downers Grove with amendments, are the ones that we would be using to review your code. That includes the International Residential Code, the Mechanical Code, and the Plumbing Code, if applicable, which is a state ordinance, actually. From the Electrical Code, the 2008 NEC is the currently adopted Downers Grove Code. Article 690, solar photovoltaic systems, is the section that is applicable to solar panel installation. There's 14 pages of regulations about solar panel systems in the NEC, so we won't go into details on those. But this stresses why you need a licensed electrician, somebody who's going to be able to do this and ensure that you're meeting all the requirements of the adopted code. So once we have all of this information and it's all been reviewed, the project manager is responsible for a single response letter back to you, the applicant. If corrections are required, then a second submittal is completed by you, and an approval letter will be issued after that second review. There will be no more than 2 reviews. And to be honest, it's probably not even going to take 2 reviews for something like this. The PM will create the approval letter, the building permit is issued, and applicable fees are collected. So for all of that service, how much is that going to cost you? $84 is the cost for this type of a permit, if it's electrical only. If it's involving the plumbing side for heating, then it is an additional fee or a different fee if there's no electric involved, for example. And that's, at most, that would be $237 for a plumbing permit, which is essentially what you would be pulling. The PM will still stay with the job through inspections and permit closeout, and will be available to you for any questions that you'll have through those phases as well. The timeline, the turnaround time for us, our first review goal is within 10 days. We were able to keep on pace with that for any permit for most of the summer, but permits are up like crazy this year. 40% up on new construction, 40% up on remodelings, and we did get outside that a little bit, but we've come back down into these time frames. A second review, we limit ourselves to 5 days on that. But as I said before, with this type of permit, you probably wouldn't need a second review. If anything, we would just say, we still need that electrical contractor's license, have it with you when you come pick up your permit. We don't make you go through a resubmittal for something like that. Lastly, inspections. What we're looking for on inspections is compliance with the drawings that were approved, the specifications that were submitted to us, and all applicable codes in the execution of the work. All you need to do is call the community development hotline and schedule an appointment for either your electrical final inspection or your plumbing inspection. This would only require one inspection. We'll save the questions for the end, but there's my contact information. I have a stack of business cards up here as well, so feel free to ask me any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. And now we will be having Brandon.
Yeah, solar in the land of trees, my adventures with photovoltaic energy. A little bit about me, I'm not just a resident here, I'm actually an energy auditor. I have been doing this for about 5-7 years now, where I'm pretty passionate about energy, so this is something that I'm really excited to be able to do. I actually sit on the board of the Illinois Association of Energy Raters, which is a group of us here in the state that do energy audits for homes and other associated energy work, but typically work in the residential space. I've kind of gotten out of that a little bit just because the demand typically isn't really there, and moved on to some commercial work. I lived in a house in the big city up until 2012 and had a lot of shadows and other stuff that was kind of unable to allow me to get any solar up and running. But this is a good instance where we did this pretty quick while we were remodeling our house. So this was kind of something that was, in the back of my head. But if you had a good contractor, Alex, who did a great job of describing the process, but it's something you don't even have to think about because your contractors and your folks helping you with it are going to take care of most of that stuff. So we did this in 3 months from when I didn't even close on the house when we were up on the roof with our site assessment stuff. So just before anything else, I do want to mention, as an energy guy, conservation is 100%, I won't say 100% cheaper, always cheaper than solar. If you're wasting energy, you're going to be way better off spending money on some conservation measures first. There's no point in putting this expensive system up on your roof to throw your energy away in an old refrigerator. Smart guy who discovered absolute zero once said, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. That's an important thing. So even before you're thinking about a solar system, it's a little easier for me because I do this stuff as part of my job and I put one of these systems in my house, but a whole home energy monitoring system will give you a lot more insight, a lot more resolution. A lot of these systems can measure your instantaneous usage down to 5-minute periods in your home, whereas typically you get an energy bill that covers a month and you have no idea, like, why did it go up this month? You can't really say. This is just a quick screenshot of my energy usage system. Every breaker in my breaker box, I'm able to see exactly how much it's using at any given point in time. So you can see as the solar system is starting to generate here at about 6:30 a.m., that little peak. And this is actually where I am generating enough to get back to the utility there, at least on one of the legs of my electrical panel. And I think that was a cold night, so you can see my furnace blower running at the before we get into the day. That's that big peak there. And a couple other systems in my house. I have a radon fan there too that's always chewing up energy that really annoys me. But we did a bunch of energy improvements in my place. This is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, and I won't really even get into these to kind of limit the time and get into the other fun stuff that we're here about. But don't deny the fact that you don't want to have incandescent light bulbs and be putting solar panels up on your house to power those. That's kind of silly. So we've covered the steps involved here. The site survey is obviously pretty important. We have a big challenge here that we'll get into a little bit more, but we have a lot of trees. System proposals and selections. I wanted to do grid tie. Batteries are a bummer. I don't want to have to maintain those. They're expensive. The Illinois grant application, that was a big deal. It is actually, I think, new this year where it's a lottery, whereas last year they sent some memo out at 8 p.m. that they opened up the enrollment, and I was, emailing Mark at 8:15, like, oh, let's get it in, let's get it in. So now it's a little bit less of a rush, but you still do definitely have to go through that process, and I think they've predetermined who, based on what order you put in, gets a thumbs up, basically. So permitting, again, it was pretty much a no-brainer. We had to do an engineering inspection where I had an engineer come in, a physical engineer, certified our roof to make sure it could handle that, so that was all no big deal. The install, again, that was another 2-day thing for us, and then commissioning and final inspection was no big deal. So, challenges for our project. We have a lot of trees in Downers Grove. I had limited south-facing roof space, so I didn't have a really big, I have a kind of a sprawling ranch with a lot of different roof angles, so it's kind of tricky. Timing the install for the purposes of the grant was a little tricky because we got approved, and then pretty much we were ready to go at mid-December, or rather mid-January, Luckily, mid-January last year, it was probably like 65, so we were up on the roof and loving it, no problem there. And sourcing American-made equipment, we were able to do that, luckily, but it's getting harder kind of as time goes on. And a big thing was making a sensible investment. Payback in under 15 years, 10 preferred, and I think we should be able to do this. Again, the political climate seems to be the big determining factor with that. So, shade and roof space. Regular photovoltaic systems are very impacted by any shading, and that can even be because of dirt or a bird that flies past and had a good lunch. So you have to really make sure that you keep those things clean or out of any shade. And a shade, you're talking about a panel the size of this. This is the same size as my panels. I have 300 watt panels. A hand or even a small business card can knock the output of that panel down considerably, almost to the point where it really isn't doing much. A big problem with traditional systems is all these panels operate in a group called a string. And so when one panel goes down or is brought down by shade or being dirty, all the other panels in that string are also brought down. So you have a system that's running much less efficiently than it could be just by virtue of one small problem with that. There's a technology out there called microinverters, which basically takes that DC energy and converts it to AC on every single panel. But that's kind of a newer technology and adds a little bit more expense. And then with a traditional system, strings of panels need to all face the exact same direction and have the same tilt. And it can make for a complex combination of inverters and panels. I want to have 3 or 4 different of these boxes in my basement for all the different panels that I'd have facing different directions. So this is my house, and you can see I've got a couple of good trees down to the south and a lot to the east, which isn't really a big deal. You don't really want to have panels going that way, but it was enough to cause concern, and we did have some shading issues once we got up on the roof and looked with the site assessment tools. So what did we end up doing? I went with a product called Solar Edge, where basically they have an optimizer that takes the energy from each panel and converts it all to about the same voltage and then pushes it out to the inverter as hard as it can. It's a DC to DC converter. The inverter still sits in my basement next to the panel. It's a grid tie system, no batteries, and it performs the AC conversion, which then flips back into the panel. This allows for a couple big advantages for us. Different modules, different orientations, and different tilts. Another thing that it involves is online monitoring down to each panel. So a traditional system, you just kind of figure out what string is producing what. So you'd have, string 1 and string 2, and might be 15 panels each. And you go, oh, string 2's down today, I don't know why. This system is actually able to tell you down to the panel what it's producing, and even down to, minutes within the day, which I'll show you here in just a second. And it is produced in California. So this is the website that's included with the purchase of these panels. I took this shot while we were having the tornado blitz. So I was making about 11 watts, considering it was a pretty cloudy day, but on a real good day, I'll make up to about 3,000 watts. It's a 3.3 kilowatt system. And I've generated so far 3.21 megawatts, and that's coming up on, not even a year yet. So that is the monitoring portal just overall. And then if you actually get down to the solar panel level, you can see this is production per day. A couple good cloudy days here, you don't get a whole lot, but you get something. And then as the shade kind of kicks in, or clouds happen, or other environmental impact happens, you can see all these panels are operating very differently. In a traditional string, this 100 watt panel will be dragging all these other guys down, but this one's actually operating 178, 165, and 100. Isn't really bringing anybody else down. So they're all able to operate independently and to the best level that they can. So this gives you a lot of really cool information about your system that frankly I really never look at because it just works there. So that's what's in my basement, humming along. My energy monitoring system is still in there, but I don't have the picture of it yet to include it with this. But we actually went with a 5 kilowatt inverter because I did want to be able to put on more panels after the fact, and the system will allow that. And it's not a big deal to have to add additional string, which it would be more or less the case with a normal system or a traditional system. We really wanted American panels, and that's getting really tricky. We wanted to use Suniva panels, which is a Georgia-based company, but they only wanted to sell us like a truckload, which wouldn't work for me. So we went with Helios Solar Works panels, which are made up in Milwaukee, or were, because Helios just a couple months ago filed for bankruptcy due to the Chinese PV producers basically dumping panels into the US and global markets. So the Chinese are losing a ton of money, pouring money into the industry, basically through the government, kind of killing the US market and the global market just to kind of, get an advantage. But we were able to get them. Not sure if anyone else is, but there are still some other American options. But here's a bird's eye view of what we did with the 11 panels, 11 300 and maybe 305 watt panels that we put up. And so you can see I have east facing and then actually a south facing. I think I said west, it was east before, because I'm locationally challenged with the directions sometimes. But yeah, I have most of my panels actually facing east and then 4 of them facing south. And so a couple things I wanted to talk about as I zip through that whole thing. I hope I didn't talk too fast, but there are a couple of really cool synergies that happen with the solar system. Well, you are on a different, I think, billing system than I'm on. I have been on the real-time pricing program from ComEd for pretty much day one when it came out. And basically what that means is I pay an hourly market rate, and so this is a good example of how peak hours can actually apply to us, and we're one of the few markets that actually has this real-time pricing rate. This blue line is basically what the power company would have told me the day before. You can expect prices to be, and it more or less matches or mirrors this red line, which is actually what I paid for electricity on this day. Electricity is very cheap at night. Most people are sleeping. They've got these nuclear power plants that are just churning out energy, so they run them. There really isn't much of a cost to keep them ahead. So this is a great way to cool your house before a hot day, run your dishwasher. There's plenty of opportunities to use this really cheap power. Now, it just so happens when my solar array is really pumping out energy is right about here, where this is much more expensive. So I'm actually paid based on that hourly rate here too. So there's an advantage to me having the solar system that's able to generate during these peak hours when I get paid the most. If I turn on my air conditioner, it's a whole different story, because my air conditioner just guzzles the entire amount of energy that my system produces, and it's kind of a wash. But as it stands now, I'm able to make about half the energy that my home consumes, and I'm hoping to increase that if I can get in on this next lottery to add some more panels up on my roof this next time, which is pretty much now. The state funding is open. So another cool thing is, eventually, I'd like to explore getting an electric vehicle, and the solar, it's great to generate, but I probably wouldn't want to charge my electric car right about here. Probably plug it in and set the timer almost all the way up now to kick off at about 12 or 1 a.m. And depending on the car, they can charge in 2 or 3 hours. And in some countries, they even let the cars be batteries for your house, so it's kind of interesting. But that's more or less my story, and questions at the end. I'm happy to talk to anyone even after the fact. So I'll pass the torch.
Thank you so much, Brandon. That was great. And so now we're going to have representatives of ISEA. So please, Laura and Lucille, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Laura Pennell-Elsier, the former PTA president at ISEA School. And basically, I'll just tell you a little bit about how we did a small project there and got some solar panels for the school. And the goal is, of course, to teach children about solar and renewable energy and to have that example of that on their school and to offset the costs of electricity for the building as well. Really what I did wasn't that great because I copied another person's project, which is a wonderful thing. We're all doing that tonight. Hillcrest School was the first in our district to get some solar panels, so I called up the PTA person there, Christopher Arsberg, and just found out how she did it. And we applied for a grant from the Illinois Clean Energy Community Foundation. Generally, their grants are due late winter in February. I've got the dates here. They're easy to write. You write a couple of paragraphs about the whole thing. It's about 2 or 3 pages long. You have to demonstrate that you're kind of on board with the whole project. We did that through Mrs. Carney here attending a solar education workshop by the NEED group, and she got a solar kit for the kids and for teaching. You have to show them that you will do certain activities with the children to teach about solar and renewable energy. And you also have to have a solar-bration or some kind kind of event to kind of build awareness and celebrate that you have these panels or you will get them. And so we planned all these things through the PTA, and really I went to everybody and said, do you want to do this with our PTA money? And everyone was on board, and our building and grounds people at the district were wonderful. Our teachers and administrators were wonderful. They helped us with the whole thing. They had done it before, so it was a lot easier the second time around. So the buy-in of everybody and just making sure everybody is on board and enthused is part of that. But the grant is easy. We waited about 3 months and found out we got it. So we had a Scarce come in and do an assembly for our celebration. They did one on renewable energy for the older kids and just recycling for the younger kids, an assembly, and the PTA pays for those anyway. And so the deal was they paid $8,000 for the cost of our 5 solar panels. They were the 1.25 kilowatt system, and we paid only $900 through the PTA. So really it was a wonderful deal. They are now the property of the district, and they're doing great. They're on the side of the building near where the kids play and everything. So far we've been lucky and there's just been no incidents, but they're right on the south side of the building. And part of the thing is they want them more visible from the street, unlike the village for people's houses, but we want them visible. We want parents and the whole community to know about them. Mrs. Carney will tell you a bit more about how the teachers and children have used that technology or learned about it in the classroom. But I would encourage you, if you're in a PTA or if you're interested for a school, it's a great thing. And I think it reduces the cost, the overall energy costs about 10% for the electricity in the building. Correct? Okay.
Correct.
So I'll pass it on to you.
Okay,
And
thank you. As Laura said, she was very pivotal in implementing this grant, and it was something we were very excited about because as our goal is to produce children who are conscious of solar energy and conservation for the future and their future, part of our role as education and adults is to encourage that. So what we have here is what they can see is this is the website that we use and that we can pull up every day. Whoops, I went too fast. Oh, you are? Okay. I thought I was, okay. So at any rate, you can see that this is what when it gets pulled up, this is what the children see. And at the top, it gives us information. And it also gives us the information at the bottom. If you can go on to the next page, the blue squares are the energy production by month.
you can also pull those up daily and hourly,
yes,
so you can see
daily and
it.
hourly.
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
numbers at the top of the screen, you need to go back.
Sorry.
That's okay. The numbers at the top of the screen, they tell us how the system is performing each day. So for instance, it tells us, the kilowatt hours, the total energy, the latest power, the peak power. The total energy is the amount of energy produced in a day. Latest power is the time and measurement of the most recent power production reported by the system. And the peak power, when you can get your most energy in the part of the day. What do the blue tiles tell us? The children can click on those, and there's all lessons that go along with this when we're teaching children about solar energy and how to read this. But this Enlighten program, which is what it's called, provides at a glance view of the system's production grid, and each square tile represents a block of time. And there are 3 views of the grid. In months, each row is a year and each tile is a month. In days, in the days view, each row is a month and each tile is a day. And in the hours view, each row is a day and each tile is 15 minutes. So the students can see historically, see patterns of when is best time to we use solar energy or that we can get solar energy, when is the least amount, when is the pattern of time so we get the least amount of solar energy, and what we can do for production. So it encourages their activity and engagement in solar energy, and they love going to see how much is saved and looking at the different patterns and doing the lessons with the teachers each day. mostly in the spring, obviously, more than in the winter. But over time, the details below change to display the production values for the dated outline in white. So if you look at the bottom, it kind of gives you the day and the grid of the kilowatts. Now, it's not a lot, we understand that, but it's a start, and it's for a school, it's 10% isn't necessarily a lot, but if everybody did 10%, that would be a lot. And our goal is really to educate children so that as they become adults, they may put their solar panels on there when they build their new homes, or when they buy a house and they want to renovate, or get their parents to do it, who knows. But if they talk enough about it, and part of our role, as I said, is in the future and saving the planet and working on renewable energy and solar energy. We feel it's a very, very important goal for students and educators to implement at the educational level. And this is something that we have available every day. And then we also have, I think there's one more slide. Let's see. No? These are just some lessons that the students were doing, checking their shadows and other things that they were doing during some of the lessons that they did for solar energy. I won't go into all the lessons because it's something that you'll all understand, and it's very simple. But for children, it's very important to be part of that. Know that they are part of that solar energy production or savings for our school. And I think if Hillcrest did it and El Tierra did it, and if we can do it, a lot of people could do it. So it's just something that we feel we value very highly. And I think if you want to go on the website, there's a lot more information for you, and then there's also information on solar professionals, and then there's also information on how to stay connected to receive more information on solar panels and solar energy in the educational field. So it's something that we, the PTA, actually Laura started it, and we all love the idea right away because it is part of our goal, as we said, it's part of our science, and it's really taught more in 5th grade, and these are some kits that they gave us for attending the workshop, and these are some of the materials. Teachers, we love show and tell, so we bring all kinds of stuff. I have handouts too if you want to look at them, but you can just pull this up yourself if you feel like the website, feel like looking at it, and see how you can start as young as kindergarten to encourage children to learn about solar energy.
We make hot water. So the easiest way to kind of explain it is you have a closed loop system, and it generates, just like you were speaking of earlier, with pumps going through the panels, which is usually a glycol mixture in this area for freezing protection purposes. There's a few different types of there's a few different types of solar thermal systems. The most common one here is a drain back system, and that's just what it is that the actual panels drain back at night when it's not being used. Solar thermal can be used in a lot of different ways. I use mine personally at my house. I'm a little bit of a nutty professor. I use mine for pool heating, space heating, domestic hot water, and I have a staple up radiant system underneath my crawl space. I have a few extra panels than most, just for the amount of BTUs, for lack of better words. For the amount of energy I need to collect, I have to have a few extra panels. One thing I did too is I did a flush mount with my panels, because in the solar thermal, the aesthetic is, they look like sails. I don't know if you guys live in this area, you've probably been by the shop and seen these big sails on the top of our shop. We heat our shop with those. So during the winter months, that's because we don't make much hot water except for hand washing at the shop, but that's what we do with the big sails you see on the top of our shop, is for space heating. There's the rebates available, which you have to apply for. One thing I strongly encourage everyone to do is check out the solar tour every year. And that gives you an opportunity to go by people like me, people like the shop. I open up the shop and my house actually usually on solar tour, just to see what's out there and what people are doing. Like my home, like I said, I had the solar thermal. Actually, I have a micro wind turbine in the back too. where it just is it's a small wind turbine you'd usually see on the back of like a yacht or something like that. And it's essentially a battery charger. If you're talking to, kind of techies, that's what it is. And that's what I do with it, is I charge batteries, and I actually run a car radio in my kid's Ford and lights, just for fun. But I'm trying to tie, my kids into thinking that way for the future, because it's mine and other people's thoughts is that we want to push people this way, and that's why we got started with it and learning about it, is because we do the plumbing and heating already, so the machine's already kind of built, and we think in the next 5 to 10 years it's not going to be any different to have someone in looking at alternative energy either. We already in the 96th percentile on furnaces. We're up in the upper 80s and 90s with boilers. We're trying to be a little more forward thinking. We don't do as many installations as I'd like to do, but we have done some very cool ones. Car washes, laundromats, the Forest Preserve recruited us, and we were doing all the remote bathrooms for hot water systems. So we did, I think, 8 of those, and I work hand in hand with Solar Services out of Niles, doing a lot of different thermal installations. We're usually their plumber, is what it boils down to, is they need someone with some licensing and things of that nature, so we team up with them and do a lot of the solar thermal installs. We do not do photovoltaic. It's cool, but we're not electricians. We do geothermal, but we're talking solar today, so if anyone has any questions about geo, they could ask me that later if they like. And then we also cover all the other high recovery and energy saving products like the furnaces and boilers and high efficiency stuff also. So I'm more here for the Q&A, so you could ask me all the technical questions you want. I don't have a presentation for you guys or anything, so I do apologize for that, but I'm just going to pass it on.
So my name is Mark Handy. This is an interesting picture. What that is basically an insulation map for the 95 kilowatt rooftop installation in Naperville, their parking lot. And so one of the things as part of the proposal process we provide is this identification of exactly how much you can produce and annually. And so the darker area, shaded areas, are where the most of the sun is going to fall during the year, the lighter the least. And so as you're looking to try and discover where you should place your panels and what the orientation is, it's best to try and do a relatively robust examination of where the sun is going to fall. And so one of the things I brought was this Sun Eye, and it's one of the older models, and fundamentally what an assessor would do would be to get up on your roof. You'd first do a Google map, take a look. We have a service called Presidio we use that provides this type of service, but this is actually when, even if we do that, we're still going to get up on the roof. You have to get up on the roof and find out what exactly is going on with the site conditions and stuff. So you can't tell exactly what the condition of the shingles and things like that are by looking at Google Maps. So there's we try and use technology where we can, but there is a human touch that's involved. I just want to tell you a little bit about us, and then what I think the installer's role should be as a trusted advisor to you as you're trying to go down the line of renewable energy as a source. A little bit, we talked already about the time and process in residential solar projects, so I won't spend too much time on that. Some of the funding options we've also gone to, and then a little bit about what's on the horizon. And I'm assuming we'll get a significant amount of questions about some of the things, because some things are kind of interesting. We were founded in 2008. We are energy systems and services company. We have lead AP on staff, NABCEP certified solar systems integrator. So NABCEP is the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. It's the license basically that is above and beyond the required electrical contractor's license or the plumber's license to be able to do and install in an expert manner these renewable energy systems. So we have individuals on our team, and we'll talk about that briefly. As Brandon was talking about, we are also certified energy raters. So we believe, first of all, that energy efficiency is the first fuel. And as Brandon was saying, it is really critical to understand what your loads are. And, besides the fact that we understand, and of course, hey, you want solar, we can put up solar. But you got to realize, okay, what's the point of this, okay? And I think at the end of the day, you have to, let's be frugal with the limited resources that we have. We are a member company of the Illinois Solar Energy Association. We participate in the Illinois Smart Grid Initiative, and we are a founding partner of the Chicagoland Green Collar Jobs Initiative. We believe in that. So that's me, the smiling face over there. I have a certificate of knowledge in photovoltaics. I'm also a past board of director secretary for the ISEA. I am also a certified analyst and building auditor and a lead AP. Our lead installer, Trang, is a master electrician. She is a certified installer, and she actually is an instructor at the Midwest Renewable Energy Association. We thought that we were going to, when we reached out to people to provide the services, we said, let's get the best that we can find, and she's definitely one of the best. She's got over 100 installs under her belt, both in Wisconsin and Illinois. On our solar thermal side, we've got John Price. He's a building and construction veteran. He's also a fireman. And he is a certified solar heating installer, also this NABCEP certification. He is also a solar instructor at the MREA, and he's on the Milwaukee Metropolitan Area Solar Water Heating Council. He's got over 50 installs, both PV and solar thermal under his belt. And then Alex Kelly, he's a lead AP. He is a certified site assessor, as well as the same designation I have, which is a certificate of knowledge in both PV and thermal. So he's got over 50 installs under his belt as well. So we thought we put together a decent team with some serious qualifications to provide what we do. So what we do is energy consulting. So renewable energy project management, so that includes siting and permitting, financing options, and installation. We're focused primarily on urban solar. We believe, as opposed to spending all of our tax dollars bringing super high DC voltage from Iowa or Kansas, we should focus on what we have here and our own resources. And we do both photovoltaic and domestic hot water or solar thermal. We do audits and measurement and verification work. ASHRAE is another standards organization. We do blower door testing and duct leakage. We do Energy Star ratings, and we do specifically the energy and atmosphere credits for LEED designation. And the reason I think that this is critical for us, and there are, and again, I've as Ryder was saying, we work with solar service as well. We've done actually some controller installs from them, and the reality is that you really need to look at the building as a system and look at the client as someone who is reaching out to try and provide an opportunity for us to reduce our dependence on foreign oil and really start to bring the resource, which is ours here in this country, to bear. It's ours. We might as well take advantage of it. And I think that you need to understand where those things come from and making sure that, to begin with, you're as efficient as you can. Because solar is, even now, even as prices are plummeting, and they are plummeting, I mean, literally, Brandon doesn't want me to say this, but we could get a better deal on his panels now from last year. It's the same panels, It's the truth. That's why we're going to give more panels to Brandon, so. At a great discount, by the way. So, but the reality is that, we have, we need to look at this as an ecosystem of things that are sometimes in flux. And that starts with understanding what's happening in your home, and then the rest of us going out and trying to source the best products with the best people. So one of the things of this concept as a trusted advisor, you go out and you need to get a site assessment. I know, hey, I want solar. So give me solar. Well, the first thing is that you need to understand, do you have the resource? Okay? Do you have the resource? And you need to go out and get on the roof and figure it out. And that's something that we provide. And we go out and we do charge for that because it's not just like kicking the tires, because what we do is we take a thorough assessment of what's happening both with your energy bills and what your loads are in the house, and we give you a professional proposal that says, hey, here's what we think you could do. Now, if that is, if you decide to go with us, even if you don't, we think that this is something that's valuable, and if you decide to go with us as an installer, that basically comes off the fee. It's not that expensive. We understand we have to source what the best options are for your site, not just the most expensive panels, okay? The thing is that panels don't all come in the same sizes. And so based on the amount of load that you want to manage or to offset with your solar, based on the size of your roof, we need to look at what the panels are that are available. There are some are larger, longer, some are fatter, and we need to make sure based on that topology of your roof what we can put on there. Okay? For us, you have to be walked through the process. Even if you've done this before for a commercial project for your business, this is your home now. And you want someone who's going to be on it. And the idea is that I need to have someone who's going to be paying attention to what's going on, not only in the supplier community for my panels, but also for the options for funding, because they are changing it. As Laura was saying, what Laura was saying, there are deadlines that are coming up, and you have to kind of be very cognizant of those deadlines. Okay, so I'll run through this relatively quickly. It's about a day on site to do the site assessment, about 3 to 4 hours, 2 to 3 hours tops, according to how complex your roof is. We will request that you provide to us at least a year's worth of electricity bills so we get an understanding of what your loads are like. We'll do a very brief walkthrough of the house, see what kind of things you have. Are you an energy consultant or a IT consultant that has a server farm in your basement, like some people we know? Or do you just have, a bunch of Xboxes and things for your kids? Okay, we need to understand what your load is and what are you really trying to get out of it. It's part of the interview process. The proposal and selection of the actual panels takes about 1 to 2 weeks because we try and put in a thoughtful proposal, and we want to make sure if we can to try and lock in some pricing for the panels themselves, even before something official has been made. We look at funding, and that could be up to 3 to 6 months based on when the grants open and when they close, and that's just the reality of this. We look at loan financing, grant as a supplement to the cost of you paying, and then the other is a milestone-based payments, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But the idea is that, look, there's no reasonable expectation that you're going to pay before the thing is delivered and it's working on time. And so the idea is that we keep ourselves incented and you keep participating in the process by doing these milestone payments. There's an energy inspection, so we bring in a structural engineer that we work with to go in and identify what the load is that can be placed on your roof, and that is baked into the documents that we provide to the village. The permitting process, I said 1 to 2 weeks. I will tell you that, we had an extremely pleasant experience here in Downers Grove. The team there, including Janet Matz, who is our, project manager, they were on it. They were interested, and there was, as opposed to some other places we've been to, it really wasn't one of those things where they're saying, okay, you guys are adding work to us, so we're going to make it difficult for you as well. It's just not that way. I think the mindset is changing, and Downers Grove is definitely on the right path. The installation, the size is very important, but it's typically no more than 3 or 4 days. And if it takes longer than that, then something went strange in the process where panels came in, and when we got them from the supplier and they were scratched or something, and we had to redo it. That's the only thing that kind of extends it. And what we do is that when we receive these, because we usually have them drop shipped, we inspect them on site before they go up. We do our testing. Same with the inverter. We want to make sure that it works so we don't have any issues. And so, the last thing, the commissioning and final inspection piece, I say that's 1 to 4 weeks because it does have some dependence upon the process here in the village and also with ComEd as your interconnection supplier, because they have a queue and you want to get in the queue as soon as possible, but we have absolutely no control over how long it takes for them to do that. We have been averaging no less than no more rather than 4 weeks. So it's been a relatively short time period. Okay, that's with the grid and connection stuff. Okay, so let me go through this. Sorry, this is a weird thing here. Okay, so the milestone-based funding, so for your out-of-pocket payments. So when the equipment is delivered and the permit is actually in hand, saying yes, we can move forward, that's 60%. This is us. Now there are other installers who may have different funding options. I'm just explaining how we do it. 20% at a successful system commissioning. Okay, so now systems come, you put it up, all the permits are done, all the stuff has happened, and it's commissioned. It actually works. Okay, it actually works. You've only paid 80% of the market value. The final 20% make sure that the village says it's okay. Okay, it doesn't mean because we can't officially have this work. It can't be officially livened until the village comes out and has the inspection. So that's when the final payment is. For Illinois' Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, that's a DCEO, they have the Renewable Energy Rebate Program. That was what was talked about earlier, $10,000, $20,000 for a commercial system. And so these are, these make things relatively attractive, but again, it's a first come, first serve. We expect that these funds are going to increase, though. So we're very cautiously optimistic that these are going to increase. The ISEA's Renewable Energy Credit Aggregation Program. That's the recap. Fundamentally, we talked a little bit about, and again, we don't have a lot of time, but the idea is that with renewable energy, electricity, there are two forms of it. There's the actual kilowatts that are going, and then you have the green section of that. That green section has a monetary value. It's called a REC, a renewable energy credit. The city of, or the town, I'm not sure if it's a town or city of Naperville, actually buys them. Okay, so we in Illinois can actually sell the renewable energy portion of Brandon's system to Naperville. Okay, and they give him money for that. And I'll talk a little bit more. There is a process right now going on in Springfield that will allow us hopefully to literally blow open this market and increase the value of these RECs by a significant portion. And I'll talk about it very briefly at the end. There is a 30% federal, the tax credit, third-party financing. We use a company called Clean Power Finance, which has been relatively successful for us. And then, as was mentioned by Laura, there's the ISEA for schools and public work projects. And then the last is that a solar power purchase agreement, which is primarily a commercial, very large install procedure. Okay, so what's on the horizon? So the DCEO grants have just recently ended. As far as taking applications for them, we're going to find out whether or not we've been chosen randomly to go through this process. We're probably going to make a little stink if we don't, since we started last year. But then there is a legislative fix for the RPS. And what this means very simply is that the RPS is the Renewable Portfolio Standard in Illinois. 25% of our energy by the year 2025, our supply of energy, is supposed to be from renewable energy resources in the state of Illinois. We are nowhere near this. Okay, we're nowhere near this. And what is the problem is that solar has a carve-out, meaning that of this idea of renewable energy sources, wind, and the lobbyists in wind, who were very successful, steered that towards 75% of that 25% of the total amount has got to be wind. 6% has got to be solar. Okay, now, I'm not a lobbyist, so we're taking what we can get, but that's 6%. That's 6% of the total. We're talking about gigawatts of energy produced in Illinois. That 6% are hundreds of thousands of houses. Hundreds of thousands of houses. And so there is still quite a bit of opportunity. The reason that is important is that this power can be aggregated and sold into the power markets. okay? The problem is that the problem, yes, we're here. The problem is that the way that the law was written originally, it was based on the supply of energy that ComEd and Ameren were providing to the state. Well, we now have this thing called municipal aggregation. And now people are going towards alternative retail electric suppliers. There's several of them out there that are other than, the city of Chicago has Integris now, okay? So now, because of the fact that they've already purchased renewable energy, because they lost so much of the supply contract, they now are saying, well, hey, we've met our requirement. We don't have to buy any more. That's clearly a problem. So there are several bills that are going through, several versions of bills that are going through the state legislature for them to fix this problem, to put it on either, they most likely put it on the delivery side, which will ensure that whomever provides the power, the supply will be renewable energy, and more importantly, that there will be a specific requirement to have Illinois renewable energy. Okay, so the other is the continuation of 30% federal renewable energy tax credit. That's right now on until 2016. We expect that one of the last things they'll do is try and extend that, because both Democrats and Republicans think it's a good idea. That's crazy that even happens in our government, but it does at some point. And then the solar leasing thing. So the thing is that he talked a little bit about the fact that leasing as opposed to just a straight finances, it's like a credit card, but the lease meaning that the installer would own your system and you're basically paying for the electricity coming off of it. You're leasing it. The reality is that the numbers don't make a lot of sense here, because the RECs are not as high as they are other places. So they've gone to other markets. California RECs, $250, New Jersey RECs, $580. Okay, our RECs are $80-something. So it's not that much. So the thing is that the big dollar people, the big high finance guys, are not going to come where the market's small. But if they fix the RPS, they will come. And what that means for us is that not only do we now have these opportunities to pay, but we will increase our opportunities to finance these systems, so that we're literally just renting. Okay. The last thing on this is. I don't know if community, I'm sorry, skip community buying. And what community buying is, there's twofold. So community buying is that, let's say we go out and do a site assessment. You're in a grove of shade, Well, the point is that you can partner with your neighbors and purchase panels that go on someone else's roof in some other place, and you will own a piece of this. This is coming. There's a couple of companies that are now doing work in California that are eyeing very closely this market, because the idea is that people are saying, hey, I want to participate in this new green energy economy, but I don't have the particular resources. Maybe I can do this as an investment opportunity. So I'll wrap it up. And last but not least, arbitrage, okay? And so just very, very briefly, we're at IIT, Illinois Institute of Technology. That's where our company is headquartered. And one of our partner organizations who's also there has basically created a product that will allow us, very similar to how net metering allows you to push back. This is a battery-based system that allows you to bid directly into the power market. So it's not just a matter of taking dollars off of your bill in the form of a credit, but it's actually allowing you to use that power to bid it in times when the grid is actually at its peak. So there's some interesting things happening right now. I think it's a very good time to start looking at this, and I hope that we can answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I want to thank our panel for their presentations. Our workshop is scheduled to end at 8:30 today. And so I don't believe we're going to have time for question and answer, but there are a couple things that we can do to be sure that we continue this conversation. One being that I'm going to have essentially a sign-in sheet up here where you can put your email down to receive a link to this presentation with the contact information of all of the presenters. Also, we're going to be putting up this presentation, as I said, onto our website. And I encourage people to talk after these presentations, but I want to thank everybody and our partners and sponsors, the School District 58 and 59, and the Library and the Park District. And I want to thank all of our panelists again for coming out and giving great presentations, and I truly hope that this has a large impact on Downers Grove. So please again continue the conversation, and thank you again.